Hey, welcome to my fourth vlog. In this one I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the developments and changes I've made in my alchemy game, as well as a little bit about Picky Pudgy Monsters, which you guys can see in the second and third vlog videos, which are in the playlist on my right, maybe? I don't know. Somewhere. Look around the page. So I guess first I'm going to talk about the alchemy game, the Rondell game. The biggest breakthrough came, Steve Nicks of Troubadour Games. I posted on Twitter about it, and he saw my vlog, and he had a great idea about how to thematically incorporate why the two figures, like how they're linked, basically. And he had the idea that is great, that basically they're the same person, but because the crystals in this game are messing with space and time, they're in parallel universes. Which I thought was really cool. It also made me really wish I got the little mouse ranger, because that was one of the options. But so then, based off that, I had the idea in order to mechanically kind of push that theme, which is something I do a lot. I generally design mechanics first, and then I'll put a theme on it, and then I'll add some mechanics that support that theme. So I had the idea that instead of having each one be able to move one or two spaces, now they can only move a total of 3 spaces between the two of them, which means you can move one space and one 2 space or you can move one all 3 spaces and not move the other one at all, which I love because that gives you, now you have larger access around the board. There are more places you can go, but you sacrifice being able to get 2 things each turn if you use all 3. So I really like that balance that it adds to the game. I just finished a playtest of this with a couple modified rules, some new cards, things like that, and I think it went really, really well. It took exactly half an hour to play, which I think is the perfect amount of time for this game. And the final score was 24-22. I was playtesting against myself, but I was trying to do kind of an optimum strategy for each player based off what was available on the board. So clearly one, I focused more on upgrades, and one I focused more on completing quests, but both seemed totally viable. The one where I focused on upgrades was a slower strategy that then, as the game went on, built, and because I had a better engine going, I could get more things, where the one where I mostly just went for quests was slow and steady. And it came down to the very wire on whether or not, on who won. So it feels pretty balanced at this point. I'm still going to try some weird stuff to break it. And the player interaction with being able to take a cube, or not take, actually, but trade a cube or a disc with another player felt fine. I don't like a whole lot of player interaction in games, especially not take that interaction, which I was a little bit afraid of, but because crystals are pretty hard to come by, and they're very valuable in that you can go all the way around the board with them, you can go wherever you want, you really can't just do a lot of, like, take that to screw your opponent. So you only do it when it's totally necessary, and it's really not that big a deal to have a cube or disc taken from you, because it's replaced with a different cube and disc. I currently, the way the game stands right now, it's 40 cards, and I use the cubes and discs, I use 2 of the 3 figures, I use crystals, I use the coins. So now the only components I'm not using at all are the stands, the dice, the panda, and some of the resources, the gold and brick. And so I'm pretty happy with that. I feel like that's very much in line with the competition. I feel like I'm kind of maximizing use of a lot of stuff. I plan on playtesting this some more, where the board can be a random setup, and if that's the case, I think I'm going to use dice to determine where the player pieces start on the board, in which case the dice will come into play. So I think that's pretty cool. And then the panda meeple could be a starting player marker, but I don't think there's an advantage to being the starting player, as long as both players get the same number of turns, which I guess a player marker would be nice to remember that. So that could work. I might work that in thematically. And if that's the case, then the only pieces I'm not using are the card standees and a gold and a brick. So that's great. I'm very happy with that. I'm very happy with how this is turning out. I love the fact that this game, I checked, and aside from the figures whose bases are too big, it would fit in a Hanabi box, so it's kind of the standard small box, and with the bigger figures. So if you use like meeples, it would fit in this box. And if you use the bigger ones, this Oddball Aeronauts box is a little bit thicker, but they would fit. So from like a marketing and game production perspective, I think it's pretty marketable, and I think it is, in terms of small box games like this, I think it packs a ton of game into a very small box. Something I want to try, because it is only a 2-player game. I think that is not a weakness of the game, but I would like for it to be more players. I don't think that there's a way with the resources I have to do that. But I had the idea to design a 1-player variant in the game, which might be interesting, and I don't think it would be that hard, because it's very easy to kind of have, you know, a method that the characters move, and that's the only thing that pulls against you, really, in the game. So I might make it a 1 or 2-player game, which I think would be a little bit interesting and creative. I don't see a lot of people making 1-player games in the thread of all the designers. So yeah, I'm happy with this. I'm going to very soon, hopefully on Friday, have time to get some actual human playtesters that are not myself, and then the game will totally fall apart and it'll rip it to shreds, and that'll be great. Then if that goes well, I'll start trying to work on rules, and then I'll start to get blind playtesters that are only reading the rules. I don't have any interaction with them, and I'll see how that goes. I'm a little bit worried about that. I'm not great at writing rules, but we'll see how that goes. So that is where... Oh, and I forgot to say, I came up with an idea because of Steve Nicks's idea for the that they're connected in time and stuff. And I had the idea for the name, which I'm very happy with, and it's Echo Alchemists. I think that's a cool name. It's almost an alliteration, but it's not at all alliteration, but phonetically, like Echo and Alka work together, and Echo Alchemists sounds cool and thematic and interesting. So right now, this is Echo Alchemists. I also actually had a bit of a breakthrough on Picky Pudgy Monsters. I should have called it Picky Pudgy Pandas and just drawn them all pandas. That would have fit way better with this theme. Alright, so if I was doing Picky Pudgy Monsters for the competition, I would certainly make it Picky Pudgy Pandas. But I had a breakthrough on that. I realized what wasn't working, and it's so obvious, it's kind of embarrassing that I didn't realize, but the cards that you were completing that would make your engine better there was no option to them. You had to complete all of them, and that was it. You had to complete them, so you were just completing them. So I realized there needed to be extra incentives based on how you complete them. So I added, instead of it just being 3, I added 5, and I also realized that there were 5 cubes as 5 dice weren't enough, didn't offer enough variety and random, so I added in the discs as well. So now you could use a circle, which is a disc, or a cube, and then the circles that have squares in them are either a circle or a cube. So now only the cubes have the triangle symbol on them, whereas both the dice and the discs have the circle and the X symbol on them. So you'd shake them up and you know, cast them and see how that goes. And now, as you're going up the card, the first 2 levels you just have to complete, but then you have the option to complete the 3rd level, and if you do, you get a victory point, and you can just end it there and flip the card over and go on to your next card. But if you get to the next level, you get a victory point and a crystal, and the crystal is a wild that you can do that counts for anything. You can only use once, so you can decide to keep pushing, and if you push all the way and complete the top, which is the hardest, you get a victory point, a crystal, and now your blacks are wild. They can be anything. Your blacks just are wild now, which would be marked on the back of the card. So now you have a push your luck mechanic. You see how far you go, and I think that fixed it and is more interesting, but it also put me in territory where the statistics started to matter a whole lot, and I am not good enough at statistics, and I didn't have enough time to sit down and figure out statistical probabilities for really weird things, whereas both discs and dice that share things, so it's not as easy as just a D6. It's actually a D3 and a D2, and some of the things are shared between the 2 of them, and some aren't, and so I like the idea still. I like the idea. I like it enough that I did some new monster drawings, and I was having fun with them, but then I realized after the fact that I think they're too scary looking. So they actually ended up a little bit not so much cute as kind of grotesque and gruesome. But I did those, and it's a design that I'm going to keep working on. And not for this competition, but we'll see where it goes. I think it's a pretty marketable design as well, which is exciting. And that's what's so cool about this competition is like having forced inspiration just like really makes you push through when stuff isn't working, and it just always thinking about games and stuff. So I've really appreciated that. So I will have that be the vlog for this week. I probably won't vlog for about another week, but if you want to keep up with it, you should subscribe to this YouTube channel. You should follow me on Twitter at ChrisBryanGames, and you should subscribe to my Board Game Geek blog, which is Chris Bryan Games. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.